Hey guys, it's Candi. Welcome back. So I'm so excited to create this video today. I have had it on my list forever and I am just dying to share with you guys my thoughts on all of the Colleen Hoover books that I have read so far. I have actually read 16 of them and they're all here in the order that I have read them. I'm going to share with you guys what I rated the book and just a very brief description on what the books are about. And then at the end, I'm actually going to put the books in order of how much I liked them, from favorite to least favorite, to kind of just maybe help you decide if you've not read Colleen Hoover books before and you really want to start, what books should you read first? Of course, this is just my opinion. Everyone's opinions on her books vary. I know there's one book in particular of hers that so many people I know love, and it was my least favorite, and I'll explain why on that later. I did want to mention as well that I still have 8 books of Colleen Hoover's that I have not read yet. I ordered Never Never, which is a book that she co-authored with Taryn Fisher, and it's actually the series all rolled into one book, and it's coming out, I believe, February 28th. So I pre-ordered that on Amazon. And then I also have Too Late that I haven't read, and then the Maybe series, which consists of these 3 books, and then the Slammed series, which consists of these 3 books I have not read. I do plan on reading these, but I also have so many other books, especially a lot of thrillers, that I have just been dying to read, and a couple really good books that I got for Christmas, that I just don't think I'm probably going to get to these other Colleen Hoover books until probably like late spring or early summer. So I really wanted to get this like Colleen Hoover video up before then. Anyways, without further ado, the first Colleen Hoover book that I ever read, and I don't remember the dates on when I read these books, but first one I ever read was Verity. And Verity, if you guys don't know, is actually very different than any of the other Colleen Hoover books that she has written. I would say the next closest one to this that I've read so far would be Layla, because Layla's kind of like a paranormal book. This book, I guess, would be considered a thriller. It's not mystery. Well, I guess there's a little bit of a mystery element to it, but it's mostly thriller. And it is about this girl who ends up being like a ghostwriter, like this husband. Okay, there's a husband and wife, and the husband hires this random girl off the street, basically, to be the ghostwriter to finish his wife's book that she's writing, because she is just in a state where she's not able to write books anymore. And just all this weird stuff starts happening, like really creepy, weird. And then one of the amazing things that Colleen Hoover is known for is just the ending of her books always seem to have some crazy twist. And with this one, you will just have to pick your jaw up off the table, because it's so very unexpected, and you'll find yourself thinking about this book for hours, if not days, after you finish it. I do know there's a updated version of this book that is out now that has, I believe, like an additional chapter. I rated it a 5. I was off to a great start. I was like, wow, I definitely need to read more of her books. And most people would think, oh, next book you're going to read is It Ends With Us. And my theory was I didn't want to read It Ends With Us until It Starts With Us comes out so I could read them together. So instead, I waited until Reminders of Him. I put little sticky notes on all of them so I remembered my rating. I waited until Reminders of Him came out, and I read this the minute it came in the mail, and I rated it a 5. And this one is about this gal who just gets done serving a sentence. She's in jail for a crime that she had committed. And when she gets out, all she cares about is having a relationship with her young daughter. When she went into jail, she was actually pregnant, and her daughter was being raised by the dad's parents. And this one was like, wow, like Colleen really knows how to write a just gripping book. Like there's something about her books that are addictive, that like you can't put them down, or you don't want to put them down. So that was the next one I read. So then we have Ugly Love. I actually have a couple sticky notes on this one because I wanted to make sure I made note of these few things. Ugly Love is the one book that I just did not like. And I know this is probably one of the more popular books of hers, especially when it comes to like Karli and some of her friends who have read a lot of Colleen Hoover books. I rated it a 3 and I did not love this. I just found the lack of communication between the two characters very annoying and unrealistic. So you have this guy and this girl that meet. This girl had just moved in with her brother, and this guy, Miles, lives in the like apartment across the hall. And her and Miles decide to have a kind of like friends with benefits relationship. No strings attached. They're just gonna hook up, have sex whenever they want, but there's no feelings involved, no expectations. And every other chapter goes back and forth between her chapters, her name's Tate, is the girl, and Miles' chapters, which are written from some things that happened in his past, like 6 years ago, that explains why he doesn't want to get into a emotional relationship. And it's just ridiculous to me that a girl in her 20s, at the point in her life that she is in, she's set with her career and all that, would like tolerate the kind of relationship. And I don't know, like, why would you just not ask questions, talk about it? Like, I don't know, it was just a toxic relationship, and I just felt like, I don't know, I couldn't wait for the story to be over with. Next up, I read Confess. And I loved Confess. I feel like Confess is one of her most underrated books. I don't feel like this book gets talked about enough. This one is about this girl, Auburn, and she's kind of just, things aren't going very well in her life. She's walking down the street. I think she's thinking, I need to find a job or something like that. And she sees a sign on the door of this art studio, and was like, oh, I should apply for a job. And of course she ends up meeting Owen, the owner of the art gallery. Did I call it art something? Did I call it an art shop? It's an art gallery. Anyway, she ends up meeting him, and the whole Confess comes from, he creates his art based off of people dropping their confessions on these little pieces of paper in the door of his art studio. So someone may confess something like, I confess I'm in love with my English professor. And somehow he creates art from their confession. And they're way better confessions than those. That was a really lame one. But I rated this one a 5. I really, really liked the characters. I feel like if I went through all the trouble to write these notes and then I'm gonna just disregard them. Okay, I created 2 separate videos on these books, so I don't want to get that in depth. If you really want to know, I will link the videos down below. It Ends With Us. I gave it a 5. I absolutely loved it. I cried, I don't know, multiple times throughout this book. I think it's so good. However, I finished this book with the unpopular opinion of I was Team Ryle. But there's a lot of trigger warnings on this book too, so look those up before you read it. It was tough for me to go from being Team Ryle, who I felt, I don't know, I can't say because I don't want to give it away. I have spoilers in my other videos, so you're not going to want to watch those unless you want the spoilers. But if you've read the book and you want my opinion, go check it out. So 5 on that book. I just have a lot of thoughts to share on that one. So when I read this one, I changed my rating 3 times. When I first read it, I straight up just gave it a 3 because I was so disappointed. I just expected so much more from this book because It Ends With Us was so freaking good. And I just felt like it missed the spot. It just was not enough drama. It was just too wishy-washy, like waste of my time. Like all this build up for this book to come out. Then I changed it to a 4 because I thought, okay, it was written for the fans. I understood that that was Colleen Hoover's goal, was not that she felt she needed to continue the story of Lily and Atlas, but it was for the fans. So I was like, okay, 4. And then as I let time, little more time go on, I actually changed my rating to a 5 because it was a beautiful story. But again, if you want to read my spoilers on this, there were still a lot of things with this book that disappointed me, that truthfully now that like months have gone by, I kind of stand by my 4-star rating. I don't think this book deserves a 5. Just my opinion. Okay, next up we have November 9. And I know sometimes when I talk about this book, I call it November 9th, and that's okay. And I don't know why I'm having a hot flash right now, but okay, let me cool down. I said I don't know why, but I do know why. I'm 50, that's why. Anyways, November 9. This book was just so unique. Like, what a simple storyline. So you have these two people, they meet, but their lives are kind of headed in these different directions. They agree that every November 9th, they're going to meet up with each other. They don't exchange phone numbers, email, addresses, nothing. Just we pick this location and this is where we're going to meet up 1 year, November 9th. And they, I'm pretty sure, agree that they're going to meet up for like 5 years. And then at the end of the 5 years, they're going to be, quote, ready to like be in a relationship with each other because they're both just working on different things in their life. This book has such a twist that it's just, again, jaw-dropping, and just the concept of it and the love and admiration and chemistry and just passion with the two characters in this book. I was just so overwhelmed and in love with the story. Obviously, you'll see later on. It's one of my favorites. I highly recommend when people email me, I'm getting ahead of myself here. When people email me and say, what should I start with? November 9th is one of those recommendations always, among some others. We'll get into that later. All right, Heart Bones. I gave this one a 4. I don't know why this just didn't hit the spot. I feel like it was good. It wasn't like it was bad. It just wasn't the typical. I think this is the one that when I rated it on my Instagram, follow me on Our Family Nest on Instagram if you're not already, I actually said if I was comparing this to other books that I have read recently, I would give this book a 5. But comparing it to other, I'm still cooling myself down if you can't tell. If I'm comparing it to other Colleen Hoover books, I give it a 4. I just felt like it was missing something. I don't know what. So this one is basically this girl. It starts out right off at the beginning. She was raised by her mother and her mom dies immediately. Colleen Hoover's also known for that. Her books just right off the bat catch you. Like always good from the first line. First sentence, I should say. So her mom dies, she has to go live with her dad, who she really doesn't remember anything about. She used to kind of visit with him when she was a little girl, but as time went on, she's seen less and less of him. So she ends up going to this beach house where he lives with his new wife. She has a daughter, and so now she, you know, has to form a relationship with her half sister, and she meets this guy at this beach house, and now she's part of this whole like rich world where she literally would do sexual favors just to get enough money to have food to eat. So her life, you know, drastic 180. And the guy that she meets, there's just something mysterious about him. And like I said, it was a good relationship, but not the kind of chemistry that you find in It Ends With Us or November 9th. So maybe that's what I was missing from this book, but I only gave that one a 4. Next up, we have Layla. I gave this one a 4.5. It was very interesting. It's so different from her other books that you want to keep reading because you're like, what is happening? But I found myself when I was reading this book quite irritated pretty often because I felt like Leeds, the main male character, was just so rude. Like the things he was doing and the choices he was making just annoyed me so much. So basically you have this girl, Layla, who meets Leeds. And shortly after they start dating and they're like, you know, instant chemistry, love of their lives, Layla has an accident, and the accident kind of leaves her not in the best state, not mentally, not really physically. She's just messed up. So he decides as like a romantic gesture to book this little trip for them to go stay at the bed and breakfast where they first met. And when they were there, there was like no one else there. Like the place is closed down. It's actually up for sale. And just all this weird stuff happened. So that's where like kind of like the mystery, thriller, paranormal stuff comes into play. So if you like that kind of stuff, I feel like you will enjoy this book a little bit more, which is why I give it 4.5, because I do like the thriller aspect of it. But at the same time, it was just so kind of unrealistic. You know, I like a thriller that still at least seems like it could happen, you know? This was like, what did I just read? But yet I still gave it a 4.5. It's so frustrating because it's still a good book. We jump into the first book of the Hopeless series. This is the book I finally figured out. Oh, you guys see my sticky note. I gave this one a 5. This is the book I finally figured out a long time ago. Like more than 5 years ago. I remember living in our old house, taking a bath for hours, well, probably not hours, maybe like an hour and a half, something, to finish this book, because I don't remember if I read it fast or whatever. I just remember reading it and really liking it. And I just remember sobbing uncontrollably in the bathtub finishing this book. But for the longest time, I couldn't remember what the book was because it was so long ago. I was just like, I know I read a Colleen Hoover book a long time ago, but I couldn't remember which one. And I actually thought maybe it was It Ends With Us, but it was Hopeless. This was copyright 2013. So anyways, I never read any of the other books, but I did read this one. I gave it a 5. It's a great story. There's some trigger warnings in here. This would be really hard to describe what this is about without giving it away. Maybe it's just because the book is so fresh in my mind. So this is described as the story of 2 young people with devastating past who embark on a passionate, intriguing journey to discover the lessons of life, love, trust, and above all, the healing power that only truth can bring. So the 2 characters, they're in high school, they meet, instant chemistry. They seem like the perfect little couple, but there's so much more to the story, and it's just so good. Jaw-dropping ending, and you're like, okay, great. It's not really an ending because there's more books to the series. However, you would think I would read book 2 next, but I didn't, because I was like, not intrigued to read book 2 right away, and I'll explain that why in a minute. So instead, I read Regretting You. And I would say I would give this book a 4.5 until I got to the very last chapter, which I actually read twice because I felt like it was just so beautifully written that I increased my rating up to a 5 just for the ending alone. You have a mother and daughter who are struggling with their relationship because her dad passed away in a car accident and she's just about to turn 18. So you have that typical rebellious stage where she keeps seeing this boy that her mom doesn't want her to see or date. And there's a relationship that develops there that's a really sweet, cute relationship. But there's kind of like this big major thing that happens that really just changes everything. And it's kind of disturbing news to everyone involved. And you basically are reading about how the characters in the book learn to live with and adjust to sometimes life's unexpected happenings, from her father's death to some hidden secrets that come to surface. And like I said, if you read this book without knowing who the author was, you probably would be surprised to learn that this is a Colleen Hoover book, because it's just, to me, written a little bit differently. So then, still not ready for Hopeless book 2, I jumped into Reading Without Merit. So this one is just about this Voss family who, they live in like a church that they're divided up into these like quadrants, and every person in this family is just really messed up. So then one day, merit, that's the other thing. Without merit, you're thinking of merit as the word, the noun Merritt. Merritt is actually the lead character's name. And she just doesn't have the best relationship with her sister. She's got this thing that happened in her past with her brother. She thinks her dad is just a total jerk. The fact that her mom is just like, has major like mental health issues, living in the basement, but yet the dad is remarried, living in the same house with the stepmother. It's just all kinds of messed up. And finally, Merritt just gets to kind of like her wit's end and decides to just blow everything up and tell everybody like what's been going on behind everybody's back, kind of, so to speak, almost like she wants to just ruin everybody's life because she feels her life is ruined. So all these issues come to the surface and they're just left to deal with a lot of problems. And it's just really, I don't know, enjoyable, I guess. I don't know if enjoyable is the right word. It's really interesting to see how they pick up all the pieces and learn to deal with everything and try to move forward. So 4.5 on that one. So then I finally decided to finish the Hopeless series. So those are the books that we have left. There's actually 4 of them. So the whole reason why I wasn't really super excited about reading Losing Hope is because it is actually the same story of Hopeless. It's just told from the male character's point of view, but it's actually worth reading. Now, could you read the other 3 books without reading this one? You could. You're not going to really miss anything at the end of the day. There are some, maybe like 3 extra little moments in here that you'll actually walk away with learning something new. Other than that, some of these chapters are literally written word for word of Hopeless. Like you almost feel sort of like ripped off. But I still gave it a 4 because Hopeless is so stinking good. I just couldn't bring myself to give it a 3. So then we have Finding Cinderella. So Finding Cinderella is about Daniel, and it's about Daniel. It's a novella, so it's a really short story. And when he goes to school, he realizes that one of his hours, one of his periods, they didn't schedule him for any classes. So for a period of time, he decides to just hang out in like this closet and take naps, hang out. He's like, I'm going to just do this until someone finally figures out that I'm like missing for this period because I don't have a class scheduled. So one day this girl walks into the closet, completely pitch dark, and they share some really special moments. The things they say to each other, the things that happen between them is just something that Daniel feels deep down in his heart he's going to carry with him for the rest of his life. It's just a really, again, these kids are in high school. It's not really all that deep, but at the same time, it's just a really cute moment. I rated this a 5. It's a really, really cute novella, super fast read. Obviously, you'll probably get through it in one sitting or at least 1 or 2 days at most. But then, oddly enough, we jump into All Your Perfects. I rated this one a 4. It was so predictable to me. It goes back and forth in time between when this guy and this girl first met, Quinn and Graham, okay? It goes from when they first met to now they're many, many years later in their marriage, and Quinn is having difficulty getting pregnant, so she is like detaching from the marriage emotionally, physically. They're really struggling in their marriage. And so it just goes back and forth between telling things from when they first met and fell in love and planning their wedding and introducing the parents and all that kind of stuff into the present time where their marriage is falling apart. And because of that, it's just so predictable. Like, you know that they get married. So when you're reading all the stuff in the past, you know what's going to happen because they got married. When it comes to the present time chapters, it really just drags out and you're just feeling like, do I need to know all of this information? Like, what are we getting at here? Even though I gave it a 4, is it worth reading? Yes, it is, because Finding Perfect I rated it a 5. Again, it's a little short novella, but it brings all the characters from all the books all together. And it's just so heartwarming and sweet and important to read all the other books just so you can finish it up. Like literally the fact that there's a red bow goes along with my saying how when you read a book and maybe it's not that great, but then you get to the ending and the ending just wraps it up like a nice, perfect little present with a red bow on top. Like to me, this is the perfect cover. And I don't know if that's why she made this cover, but to me it makes complete sense because out of all those books in the series, that is what this book does. Wraps everything up perfectly. You'll cry and cry some more, and you'll just keep reading through your tears through the majority of this book because it's just so stinking good. So that is it, guys. Oh my god, that took way longer than what I thought it would. I'm so sorry that this video ended up being as long as it has. I'm just gonna jump right into I'm just gonna jump right into showing you the books in order of how I recommend you maybe not necessarily read them, but what my favorites are and what my least favorites are. So tying for first place would be It Ends With Us and November 9th. These are by far my two favorite Colleen Hoover books. These are the two that when people say I don't know where to start, I recommend them reading one of these first. I probably encourage November 9 a little bit more than even It Ends With Us, just because then I know you're going to read It Starts With Us and you might go through that disappointment, and I don't want you to use that to sway you into not reading any more Colleen Hoover books, where I feel like if you would read this one alone, you're gonna want to read more. Next up is Confess. I just really love this book. I love the idea behind it. Loved everything about it. Going to always be one of my favorites. Hopeless. Very different than Confess. This is way more of an emotional roller coaster. Very jaw-dropping, traumatic. Definitely a must read. Even if you don't read any of the other books of the Hopeless series, read this one. Tied for, I guess you could say, fourth place would be Reminders of Him and Verity. I mean, I guess Verity I probably liked a little bit more. Then we have to come back to the Hopeless series with the two novellas. Let's just call these both fifth place. I love them both so much. Next, I went with Regretting You, followed by It Starts With Us. So you guys can see it is still one of my more loved books by Colleen Hoover. It didn't end up at the end, even though when I read it, I was a little disappointed. Then we have Layla. Then we have Without Merit, followed by Heartbones, followed by All Your Perfects, because I just wasn't sold. Losing Hope, just because it was redundant. And the least favorite, you guys probably already figured it out, is Ugly Love. So as you can see by the bottom of my pile, based on even when I talked about all of these books, there's not too much to not like about Colleen Hoover books. I'm a huge fan. Honestly, all these books, I wouldn't tell anybody not to read them. I'm just saying from my experience in reading the books and how I enjoyed the stories, this is the order that I enjoyed them in. So I would hate for someone to like read and start with Ugly Love and not be sold on wanting to continue to read her books, because there really is a huge variety. It's not like when you read them, you don't feel like you're reading the same story over and over and over again. They're all kind of written, not all, but a lot of them, as I described, are written quite differently from each other. So whatever got me initially interested in reading Colleen Hoover books, I'm thankful for, because I really enjoy them. I'm glad I became a fan of her books and probably will continue to be a fan of her books as she hopefully publishes some more for all of us big CoHo fans. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Give me your thoughts down below. Do you feel like I'm totally off on any of these books? Did you love Ugly Love? If you did, tell me why. Did you not love November 9th? Was that not one of your favorites? Tell me why. Anything you want to give me feedback on down in the comments below, I appreciate it. Let's keep the conversation going. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys back with another book video in 2 weeks. Bye guys.